This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
"6:45. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Danushka Madhavala, read by Soundi Thavam. The Exim Bank chairman and the president discussed Sri Lanka debt issues. The US appreciates economic recovery efforts undertaken by the president. Japan agrees to provide more job opportunities for Sri Lankan workers. The finance ministry says the pension payments for this month have already been deposited to the relevant recipients' bank accounts. The Sri Lanka Railways instructed not to cancel 42 train journeys as planned. In foreign news, the second batch of classified Biden files found. And in sports, the second ODI between India and Sri Lanka will be played today. The chairman of the Export-Import Bank of China, Wu Fulin, has engaged in discussions with President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The talks were held via video conference on Tuesday. The two parties exchanged views on bilateral cooperation and Sri Lanka's current debt issues. The Chinese embassy in Colombo said the two sides agreed to further strengthen exchanges and collaboration on the resolution of Sri Lanka's debt issues and help the island's economic recovery and sustainable development. The United States values Sri Lanka's partnership and is keen to further strengthen ties between the two countries through a broad array of partnerships. The National Security Council's South Asia Senior Director, Rear Admiral Eileen Lobaka, said. This was revealed by Lobaka when she met President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Presidential Secretariat last morning. During the meeting, the Rear Admiral expressed her government's appreciation for the recovery efforts undertaken by President Wickremesinghe in regard to the economic crisis in the country. President Wickremesinghe outlined the government's economic plans, including the economic reforms being undertaken. The President also discussed maritime matters, including the increased efforts by the government to crack down on the narcotics trade. A high-level Japanese diplomatic delegation met with the Minister of Labour and Foreign Employment, Manusha Nanayakara, yesterday, agreed to give priority to Sri Lankan workers under the SSW program, which sends workers for employment in Japan, and to give full support of Japan. The Japanese representatives stated that they are ready to hire more Sri Lankans to meet the labour demand in Japan, and because of the close cultural and religious relations between the two countries, they are more willing to hire more Sri Lankans. Accordingly, Minister Manusha Nanayakara explained that he has prepared the necessary arrangements with his direct intervention for Sri Lanka to become number one among the labour-supplying countries to Japan. The minister also told the delegation that with the intervention of the Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau, 5,000 people are being given Japanese language training and 17,000 have taken the Japanese language proficiency exam held recently. The delegation also agreed to help Sri Lanka to establish a vocational training centre targeting the automobile industry to train local youth for jobs in the automobile industry in Japan. Those who undergo training at the centre successfully will be eligible for direct employment opportunities in Japan. This initiative is expected to bring more job opportunities to Sri Lankan workers in the automobile sector in Japan. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
People's Bank Excelsior. Live the life you want.
The Secretary of the Ministry of Finance, Mahinda Sirivardana, said the pension payments for this month have already been deposited to the relevant recipients' bank accounts. There was a slight delay due to the financial restrictions at the Treasury. The government spends around 26 billion rupees for this purpose. Meanwhile, the government has taken effective measures to provide the salaries of the government servants and samurdhi payments as well. Therefore, the government requests the general public not to fear about the salaries and other allowances, as the relevant stakeholders have taken care of those matters. The Minister of Transport, Bandalu Gunawardene, has instructed the Sri Lanka Railways not to cancel the 42 train journeys as planned from today. The railway officials earlier said that they may have to cancel several train journeys due to several issues. That concludes local news.
People's Bank Excelsior, a comprehensive banking services package with a branded checkbook as well as debit and credit card exclusively for you. People's Bank Excelsior, for professionals who dare to dream.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The Minister of Buddha Sasana, Cultural and Religious Affairs, Vidura Vikramanayaka, emphasized the importance of preserving the nation's heritage to bring closer the meaningful cultural developments to the common masses. The Minister promised to take effective measures to achieve this goal through Dhamma School and other Sunday School religious education during this year. The Minister made these comments while sharing his comments with the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation yesterday and came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Brush your teeth twice a day for healthy teeth and gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, your trusted brands in oral care for many years.
Supiriviki Ayurvedic toothpaste for adults. Kakulu Ayurvedic toothpaste for kids. 9 Ayurvedic ingredients of Supiriviki will protect your teeth and strengthen your gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, products from Siddhalepa.
Moving on to Watchlight, the Sri Lanka Surgeons and Medical Specialists Association warns of an influenza virus outbreak in the country. Symptoms such as difficulty in breathing, cough and sore throat are commonly noticed. The Deputy President of the association says the consumption of ample amounts of liquids and nutritious food is recommended. At a press briefing, he said these symptomatic conditions adversely affect patients with kidney disease and pregnant mothers. Antibiotics and painkillers are not recommended. He requested the public to seek proper medical treatment if symptoms prevail, and that came to you in Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Making headlines this morning, the second batch of classified Biden files found. Deadly suicide bombing outside Afghanistan Foreign Ministry. And Russia replaces commander of Ukraine invasion force. US President Joe Biden's aides have found another batch of classified government records in a second location, according to the US media. The first cache of classified files were found in November at a private office in Washington, D.C. that Mr. Biden used after his time as vice president. The matter is currently under review by the US State Department of Justice. Former President Donald Trump is under criminal investigation for mishandling files with classified markings. Mr. Biden is currently facing oversight from a new Republican majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. A suicide bomb attack outside the Afghan Foreign Ministry in Kabul has caused heavy casualties. The police said at least 5 civilians have been killed, but another Taliban official put the toll as high as 20. The attack took place about 1600 hours local time, when the bomber tried but failed to enter the ministry building itself. The Taliban said several countries, including Turkey and China, have embassies in the area. The local offshoot of the Islamic State group known as Islamic State Khorasan Province claimed it carried out the attack in a post on Telegram. Reports suggest a Chinese delegation was due to hold talks with the Afghan officials inside the Foreign Ministry building at the time of the attack. President Vladimir Putin has removed Russia's top commander in Ukraine just 3 months after he was installed. Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov will now lead what Mr. Putin terms a special military operation. General Gerasimov replaces Sergei Surovikin, who has overseen recent brutal attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. The reshuffle comes as Russians claim they are making progress in eastern Ukraine after suffering a series of military defeats in recent months. Russia launched its invasion into Ukraine on 24th February. General Gerasimov, who has been in post since 2012, is the longest-serving Russian Chief of General Staff of the post-Soviet era. Back to the headlines of the world news. The second batch of classified Biden files found. Deadly suicide bombing outside Afghanistan Foreign Ministry. And Russia replaces commander of Ukraine invasion force. That concludes this bulletin of world news.
Development news.
The Industrial Training Department says a relevant Gazette notification has been released to enroll new students for the industrial training centres located island-wide. Accordingly, students will be enrolled for 9 industrial colleges and 30 industrial training centres located island-wide. These training courses are conducted free of charge. The applications close on the 23rd of this month and came to you in development news.
Sports news is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
The second ODI between India and Sri Lanka will be played today at Eden Gardens grounds in Kolkata. India won the first match by 67 runs. And 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka has announced she is pregnant. The Japanese former world number 1, 25, withdrew from the Australian Open earlier this week, having not played since September. Court 2023 will be a year that will be full of lessons for me, unquote, said Osaka, adding that she hopes to return in 2024. That's sports news. Business news up next.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැන් පුහින හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business news, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The world's richest man, Bernard Arnault, has appointed his daughter to head up fashion house Dior. Mr. Arnault promoted Delphine Arnault 47 as part of a reshuffle at LVMH, Europe's most valuable company. It owns a high portfolio of high-ending brands and is worth about 336 billion sterling pounds. The outgoing head of Dior, Pietro Beccari, will move to replace long-time Louis Vuitton chief executive Michael Buck. That's business news. We take a look at economic news next.
Business news, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැන් පුහින හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Economic news, courtesy of...
For the 5th consecutive year, LOLC is awarded People's Financial Services Brand of the Year at the 2022 Slim Kantar People's Awards. As the People's Financial Services Brand of the Year, LOLC continues to place the customer first, and this has won the hearts, minds and trust of Sri Lankans, with yet another prestigious award as proof of this lasting commitment. LOLC, imagine the possibilities.
The Ministry of Plantation Industries of Sri Lanka has entered into a memorandum of understanding with a French expert in the rubber industry, KSAPA, for capacity building of rubber smallholders in Sri Lanka. A MOU between the Ministry of Plantation Industries of Sri Lanka and KSAPA was finalized with KSAPA Managing Director Rafael Hara signing it at the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Paris. Diplomatic staff of the embassy and the deputy head of the unit direct financing. That's economic news.
LOLC Finance is taking the power of innovation to the next level, winning 5 golds at the Technovation Awards 2022, leading the digital revolution with cutting-edge interbanking digital payments. LOLC Finance claims the overall gold award whilst also claiming an extraordinary victory in digital banking.
Weather report.
The Met Department forecasts that mainly fair weather will prevail over most parts of the island. To conclude this bulletin of news, a recap of the headlines. The Exim Bank chairman and the president discuss Sri Lanka's debt issues. The US appreciates the economic recovery efforts undertaken by the president. Japan agrees to provide more job opportunities for Sri Lankan workers. The finance minister says the pension payments for this month have already been deposited to the relevant recipients' bank accounts. The Sri Lanka Railways instructed not to cancel 42 train journeys as planned. The CPA Asia Region office to be opened in Sri Lanka. Foreign news, the second batch of classified Biden files found. And in sports, the second ODI between India and Sri Lanka will be played today. With that, we conclude this morning's news broadcast.